Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 12 matchup between the Washington Huskies and the Oregon State Beavers, two of your top contenders in the Pac-12. As we look forward to Week 12, Huskies 10-0 on the season. This team is very much a national contender at this point, but winning down the stretch is crucial for the Huskies moving forward as they take on Oregon State here in Week 12. Oregon State is 8-2 on the season. I would say this is the best two-loss team in the country. They are not a team to be overlooked. We'll be covering a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with their team trends. Washington beat Utah 35-28 last week. Huge win for the Huskies. I feel like this is a team that, they beat Oregon back in mid-October, which was a huge win. One of the better wins in the country. And then the last four games, they beat Arizona State, beat Stanford. Both were closer games, leading to this team being questioned a bit. But I feel like this team shouldn't be questioned after beating USC and Utah in the last 2 weeks. Both teams are talented. Utah's defense, many thought would be dangerous for Washington, and rightfully so, and Huskies found a way. This team is 10-0 on the season. Oregon State on the other side, big win over Stanford, 62-17. This team is dominant at home this season. That's definitely something that has been a trend for this team. On the road, they have taken 2 losses. Both were by 3 points to Washington State and then Arizona. But this team is still, I would say, probably your best two-loss team in the country just based on how impressive they have been in big games other than those 2 close losses. Games beyond the 18th in Corvallis. Spread's going Oregon State by 2.5. So Beavers, despite being ranked a bit lower, they are the favorite in this matchup, over under 63.5. And the FPI disagrees with the spread, going with Washington, 52.4%. Series history, Huskies lead at 68-35, so obviously a long history between these two teams. Huskies have been dominant for the most part. Oregon State did win a matchup a couple of years ago, but in the last 10, the Huskies have won 9 of 10. Stat comparison, Huskies 5th in points per game, 44th in points allowed. This is a common thing with Pac-12 teams, though, this season. Most of the time, the defenses aren't rated very high, and especially the pass defenses in the Pac-12 are pretty low in comparison to the country this season, but there's a reason for that. The Pac-12 is loaded with quarterbacks and strong passing games, and so it makes sense to see that out of most teams, but especially for the Huskies, 122nd in pass defense this season. So for DJ Uiagalelei on the Oregon State side, he's going to have a big game, and he definitely is going to have an opportunity to going up against one of the worst pass defenses in the Pac-12, but also the country. But for the Huskies on the other side, this team is the top pass offense in the country. Michael Penix, 3,500 yards on the season. We're in mid-November, and this guy already has 3,500 yards and 28 touchdowns, over 7 picks. If he doesn't turn over the ball very much, but when he does, can be critical, and that's the big reason why a couple of games have been closer than expected this season. But Dylan Johnson, keep an eye on this guy. He's really emerged the past couple of games. He wasn't a big factor in the first half of the season, but against USC, he had like 250 yards. So keep an eye on him. He is not to be underestimated either in this receiving core. Probably the best in the country with Odunze and Polk, and it's a lot of depth in there as well. But for Oregon State on the other side, this is a pretty balanced team, one of the more balanced teams in the Pac-12. 14th in points per game, 37th in points allowed. 30th in passing game. They are 22nd in rushing game. Damian Martinez has been incredible for this team, over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns on the season. Rush defense also strong for the Beavers. Recent matchups, Huskies beat Utah 35-28, beat USC on the road 52-42, which that was kind of a game that where we started going into that matchup, going on the road, somewhere doubting the Huskies there, especially after 2 closer games to 2 of the worst teams in the conference in Stanford and Arizona State. But once again, I feel like this team should very much be respected at this point, 10-0. And I've got them personally ahead of Florida State. I think this is a top 4 team in the country right now. You consider the Oregon win. I've got Oregon at number 5 in the country. I feel like the Ducks, the way they've played since that time they faced off against Washington, they've only gotten better. So, for the Huskies at this point, they've got a strong resume, and there's no doubt that they should be in the college football playoff at the end of the season, especially if they win out. But for Oregon State, beat Stanford 62-17, beat the Buffaloes on the road, lost Arizona on the road by 3. Turns out the Wildcats are a bit of a surprise team this season. Beat UCLA 36-24 at home, also beat Cal on the road 52-40. This team hasn't always been great on the road, but at home, this team has been one of the better home teams in the country from what I've seen. I mean, they were dominant against UC Davis and San Diego State, 2 blowout wins. Beat Utah 21-7 at home back in September. Obviously, the win against UCLA that we mentioned, and just beat Stanford 62-17 last week at home. So this team is really tough to beat at home if we've seen anything this season. They've played a couple of ranked opponents at home as well, and they've been pretty dominant in both. So, I mean, all things considered, this team probably has one of the better home field advantages in the country. Key points, Washington 10-0. This team shows up in big games. That's really been a theme this season for this team. You consider the Oregon game, the USC game, Utah games. All three of them really at critical points in the season, high pressure, and they have found a way in each of those games, especially the USC one. I know USC is definitely a bit of a disappointment. Their defense is horrible, but going on the road after a couple of close wins against Stanford and Arizona State, and with everyone doubting you, this team found a way, and being 10-0 on the season, you're doing something right. So for the Huskies, I mean, this is a team not to be overlooked. They're on the outside looking in for the college football playoff. I've got this team at number 4 right now, ahead of Florida State. I feel like they got a stronger resume than Florida State, but I mean, it doesn't matter. Down the stretch, if this team wins and they win the Pac-12 title game, which is, by the way, the most important game right now for Washington, even if they lose this game, and at least keep it close. If you lose this game in a bad performance, you lose it big. That's really going to put a dent in this team's chances. But even if they do lose this game on the road by a close margin, still go into Las Vegas, win the Pac-12 title game, this team still should be a top 14 for the college football playoff just based on their resume. But for Oregon State, Beavers' 2 losses both came by 3 points. This is a top 10 team in my opinion. I've got them ranked at number 9 this week, and this is a team not to be overlooked. DJ Uiagalelei really has been impressive, turning things around, transferring in from Clemson. Really impressive what he has done. And I mean, this team has played lights out at home this season. I feel like if there's any dangerous game on the schedule for the Huskies, I thought USC was a bit of a dangerous game, but I mean, this is probably the most dangerous game of the season, I would say, for the Huskies. Going on the road to a tough place to play, taking on a really talented team that maybe could be a bit overlooked. That is definitely a factor to keep an eye on. But with that, let's get the prediction here for Washington and Oregon State coming up here in week 12 of action. This is definitely a matchup that I feel like is as close to a coin toss as it gets. But with that, I'm going to be taking Oregon State. 38-35 is my predicted final score. I think the Beavers find a way here. I feel like the way this team has been playing at home this season, this is a pretty dangerous game for the Huskies here. And I feel like while the Huskies have the more talented offense, the more explosive offense, I feel like Oregon State is the more complete team here. I feel like defensively, the Huskies or the Beavers are better, and I feel like that's going to be the way that Oregon State finds a way to win this game. I mean, I still think Washington puts up 35. Their offense is just that good, but I feel like Oregon State's going to find a way to score late and steal a win off the Huskies here. And I will say this as well. Even if Washington does lose this matchup, as I am picking here, I still feel like this team is in college football playoff contention. Problem is, you got to win the Pac-12 title game. Washington's pretty much already clinched that in Vegas, and so they're probably going to be taking on Oregon, I would assume. It could be Oregon State if they beat Oregon and Washington in the next 2 weeks, but I do think it's probably going to be the Ducks and the Huskies. So for Washington, got an opportunity then, but obviously got to keep this game close. And if it's a big loss, pretty much takes them out of it. But for college football playoff implications, the Huskies are still in it if they lose close. But I'll say 51% towards Oregon State, as close as it gets once again. Over under 63. Now, if I'm taking the over, I mean, Washington, you look at their games this season, they've gone over pretty much every time, except for the Arizona State game. But I do think we see more of a higher scoring matchup here, and Oregon State to cover the spread in the end. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, your score predictions, all of that, and stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.